Good morning and welcome to the worship service of the Unitarian Universalist Church in Idaho Falls. My name is Arthur Cole, today's worship associate. We hope that here you will find a message that inspires you, a message that transforms you, and a loving and, although virtual at this time, a caring community that gives meaning to your life. Please note that if you have joys, concerns, sorrows, and milestones that have affected your life in the recent past, and that you would like to share with the congregation, you can do so by opening the chat box and posting them in the space provided. Thank you. We invite you now to make an offering to sustain and strengthen this church, which is so sacred to us. You can make your contribution by mailing a check to the church at P.O. Box 50376 in Idaho Falls, Idaho 83405, or by going to the church's website at idahofallsuu.org. In the connection menu, click on Donate to get to the contributions page. What is given in love is received with deep gratitude and love. May this congregation be worthy of all your gifts. Thank you, and blessed be. I invite you now to relax and enter into the spirit of worship with thoughts from the Indian poet Kalidasa. Look to this day, for it is life, the very life of life. In its course lay all the verities and realities of your existence, the bliss of growth, the glory of action, the splendor of beauty. For yesterday is but a dream, and tomorrow is only a vision. But today, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Look well, therefore, to this day. Please join me now in reading the Church's covenant, which is available in the order of service that was emailed to you. Love is the spirit of this community, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. We will now light our chalice, symbol of Unitarian Universalism, to illumine the following thoughts from Albert Schweitzer. At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us.
Good morning. Our call to worship is by Leslie Takahashi. In the daily weave of our lives, those who have died are still strong guiding threads. Theirs is the golden glimmer, or perhaps the brilliant red, or the melancholy blue. Still, they are part of the whole cloth of our lives. They are the ancestors, the goers before. Through this, we know immortality. In the hour-to-hour rush of our daily tasks, they travel with us through something they taught us, which is now ours to do. Thus, through something they loved, which is now ours to carry out. Through something we shared, which is now ours alone and yet not. Through this, we know immortality. In the minute-to-minute grasp of where we are, we remember the joys our departed gave us, which opened us to hope, the sorrows we knew together, which taught us strength, the life shared, which is now ours to steward. Through this, we know immortality. In the second-to-second pulse of life, we sense the spirit of those we have loved and lost. This presence is too shy for naming, too amorphous for full knowing, and yet as real as the days we shared. Through this, we know immortality. They are more than remembered. They are memory itself. For what we love lives on in the way our beloved dead accompany us through life. Their words and wisdom our guide, their humor our relief, their restless concern for the world our charge. Through this, we know immortality. I invite you now to join in singing our opening hymn, number 96, I Cannot Think of Them as Dead.
I cannot Today's Time for All Ages is Nana Upstairs and Nana Downstairs by Tommy de Paola. When Tommy was a little boy, he had a grandmother and a great-grandmother. He loved both of them very much. He and his family would go to visit every Sunday afternoon. His grandmother always seemed to be standing by the big black stove in the kitchen. His great-grandmother was always in the bed upstairs because she was 94 years old. So Tommy called them Nana Downstairs and Nana Upstairs. Almost every Sunday was the same. Tommy would run into the house, say hello to his grandfather Tom and Nana downstairs, and then go up the back stairway to the bedroom where Nana upstairs was. "Get some candy," Nana upstairs would say, and he would open the lid of the sewing box on the dresser, and there would be candy mints. Once, Nana downstairs came into the bedroom and helped Nana upstairs to the big Morris chair and tied her in so she wouldn't fall out. "Why will Nana upstairs fall out?" Tommy asked. "Because she is 94 years old," Nana downstairs said. "I'm 4 years old," Tommy said. "Tie me to it in a chair too." So every Sunday, after he found the candy mints in the sewing box on the dresser, Nana downstairs would come up the back stairway and tie Nana upstairs and Tommy in their chairs, and then they would eat their candy and talk. Nana upstairs told him about the little people. "Watch out for the fresh one with the red hat with the feather in it. He plays with matches," she said. "I will," said Tommy. "There he is," she said, "over by the brush and comb. See him?" Tommy nodded. When Nana downstairs had finished her work by the big black stove and baked a cake to eat before Tommy went home, she would come back upstairs. "Now," Nana downstairs would say as she untied Tommy from his chair, "we must all take our naps." After their naps, Nana downstairs would comb out Nana upstairs' beautiful silver white hair. Then Nana downstairs would comb and brush her own hair. And she would twist her hair up and pin it on top of her head. Now make the cow's tail," Tommy would say. One time, Tommy's older brother came into the bedroom and saw Nana upstairs with her hair all down around her shoulders, and he ran away. "She looks like a witch," he said. "She does not," Tommy said. "She's beautiful." "Time for ice cream," shouted Grandfather Tom, and Tommy and his brother went with him, and sometimes their father and Uncle Charles, down to the ice cream store. When they got back, it was time for Nana upstairs to have supper, and Tommy would help carry the tray of milk and crackers up the back stairway. Once, Tommy's father took movies of the whole family. He took movies of Nana downstairs and Nana upstairs, and Tommy stood in the middle. One morning, when Tommy woke up at his own house, his mother came in to talk to him. "Nana upstairs died last night," she said. "What's died?" Tommy asked. "Died means that Nana upstairs won't be here anymore," Mother answered. They went to Tom and Nana downstairs' house, even though it wasn't Sunday. Tommy ran up the back stairway before he'd even said hello. He ran into Nana upstairs' room. The bed was empty. Tommy began to cry. "Won't she ever come back?" he asked. "No, dear," Mother said softly. "Except in your memory. She will come back in your memory whenever you think about her." From then on, he called Nana downstairs, just plain Nana. A few nights later, Tommy woke up and looked out his bedroom window at the stars. All of a sudden, a star fell through the sky. He got up and ran to his mother and father's bedroom. "I just saw a falling star," he said. "Perhaps that was a kiss from Nana upstairs," said Mother. A long time later, when Tommy had grown up, Nana downstairs was old and in bed just like Nana upstairs. And then she died too. And one night, when he looked out his bedroom window, Tommy saw another star fall gently through the sky. "Now you are both Nana upstairs," he thought. The end.
We now dedicate time to our joys, concerns, sorrows, and milestones. A time to share with this religious community events that have affected your life in the recent past, and to speak out for those you want to hold in your thoughts. Drew will read your joys and concerns while we light a candle for you. And please remember that you can still add your joys or concerns in the chat box now while we are reading the ones that were posted earlier.
So we have one joy from David and Karen Shropshire. The joy that we have the privilege of voting in this country and hope for better times ahead, whatever the election outcome is. And at this time, we do not have any more joys or concerns in the chat.
We light one last candle to lift up these joys and concerns, as well as the ones that remain in the silence of our hearts.
They Are With Us Still by Kathleen McTeague. In the struggles we choose for ourselves, in the ways we move forward in our lives and bring our world forward with us, it is right to remember the names of those who gave us strength in this choice of living. It is right to name the power of hard lives well lived. We share a history with those lives. We belong to the same motion. They too were strengthened by what had gone before. They too were drawn on by the vision of what might come to be. Those who lived before us, who struggled for justice and suffered injustice before us, have not melted into the dust and have not disappeared. They are with us still. The lives they lived hold us steady. Their words remind us and call us back to ourselves. Their courage and love evoke our own. We, the living, carry them with us. We are their voices, their hands, and their hearts. We take them with us, and with them choose the deeper path of living. Since we are unable to gather together in person, we have created a slideshow to share the photos and names of our loved ones who have passed. Let us now honor their memories together. The Larger Circle by Wendell Berry. We clasp the hands of those that go before us, and the hands of those who come after us. We enter the little circle of each other's arms, and the larger circle of lovers whose hands are joined in a dance, and the larger circle of all creatures passing in and out of life, who move also in a dance, to music so subtle and vast, no ears can hear it, except in fragments. I invite you now to join in our next hymn, number 103, For All the Saints, and we'll sing verses 1, 2, and 4. Among the ancient peoples of northern Europe, this time of year, roughly halfway between the fall equinox and the winter solstice, was celebrated as a festival of transition. It was the end of the harvest and the beginning of the onset of winter, when the fields would lay fallow until spring. Typically celebrated from sundown on October 31st to sundown on November 1st, it marked the time when plant life began to die off. The daylight gave way to increasing darkness, and the cold of winter started to set in. For agrarian peoples in the north, understanding the cycle of the seasons was critically important to survival. So it is understandable that important milestones in the solar year would take on a spiritual as well as a practical significance. It is also easy to see how this particular seasonal milestone became associated with death and dying, the final mysterious transition that all of us must face. Indeed, it became one of the four most important religious holidays in ancient times. And many Neolithic passage tombs in Ireland, for example, are oriented to align with the sunrise on November 1st. Among the Gaelic-speaking tribes in the British Isles, the annual observance became known as Samhain, and there are many modern pagans who have rediscovered and reimagined the celebration of this ancient holiday. Like its spring counterpart, Beltane, celebrated in May, Samhain was thought to be a liminal time, which comes from the Latin word for threshold, a time when the veil between this world and the other world was thin, and both good and bad spirits could more easily cross over to visit the living. Offerings of food and drink were left outside to appease the spirits, and during the annual feast, a place at the table was set to invite departed relatives. By the 9th century, after Christianity began to dominate the region, the Western Church observed All Saints' Day on November 1st, and later All Souls' Day on November 2nd. And as it was often the case, the ancient pagan holiday became conflated with the Christian feast days, and Samhain became transformed into Halloween. The trio of holidays collectively became known as All Hallowtide, but few people use that term anymore. Many churches today still observe All Saints and All Souls Days to remember those who have passed. Among Unitarian Universalists, it is common to see All Souls observed by lifting up the names and photos of our loved ones as we did today. And in more normal times, the photos would be placed on an altar table. In Mexico, All Souls Day is celebrated as Dia de los Muertos, or Day of the Dead, with rituals and symbolic art which reflects a mixture of Aztec heritage and Roman Catholicism. Some UU congregations have adopted some of the decorations and rituals of Dia de los Muertos, but it remains controversial whether or not this is an example of cultural misappropriation. But while All Souls Day has retained a place as a religious holiday, with the exception of a small number of neo-pagans, Halloween has become a secular holiday and lost its religious association. It has become a frivolous occasion to dress in costumes and for children to trick-or-treat in search of candy. There is still a human fascination with death, spirits, and unnatural creatures that provides plenty of material for psychologists to explore. But recognizing Halloween as a liminal time for spiritual reflection has largely been forgotten. Maybe this is something we should think about in these uncertain times when so much of life seems to be upended and uncertain, when every moment seems at times to teeter on the cusp of hope or devastation. I'm not suggesting we try to reclaim the true meaning of Halloween per se after centuries of cultural change, but it might be good to look to nature in this time of seasonal transition for a reminder that life is often lived on the cusp, whether it is the predictable turning of the seasons, the inevitable but uncertain hour of our death, or the tumultuous moments in history when society can undergo tremendous change. Such are the times we live in, with the overlapping crises of COVID-19, dangerous political division, economic turmoil, planetary climate change, and a new awakening to the reality of racism. And we could easily add other challenges to the list. Any one of these crises provides enough anxiety to keep us awake at night. But taken together, life for most of us has become almost overwhelming and exhausting. Let us acknowledge, though, that what we are facing pales in comparison to the suffering of countless people through history, including many who endure horrific situations even today. But knowing that doesn't diminish our own real stress and suffering. The COVID-19 crisis has forced us to confront death on a daily basis more than at any time in recent memory. Each day, the news is filled with statistics on how many new cases have been reported, almost 100,000 just this Friday, and how many people have died. Lies and information pour out from some of our so-called leaders, and even more trusted sources seldom provide any assurances that things will get better in the foreseeable future. Already the virus has claimed so many lives, both young and old, and the world seems filled with grief. Knowing that winter is approaching, the epidemiologists warn us of dark days ahead with many more deaths expected in the coming months, especially if we fail to follow basic guidelines about social distancing and wearing masks. In our relatively affluent society in America, we don't talk much about death that much, and I think part of that is because death has become less frequent as part of our daily experience. Thanks to advances in medicine and better sanitation and nutrition, the infant mortality rate is much lower than it was a few decades ago, and deaths among the young due to common illnesses are no longer an ordinary occurrence in most families. The other reason we don't talk about death, I believe, is more universal. We live as beings who are aware of our own mortality, and this instills an anxiety in us about the meaning of non-being. It is uncomfortable to imagine a world without us, separated from the deep relationships we have formed. And for those grieving a lost loved one, it can be especially hard to talk about death. Even though it has been nearly 3 years since we lost our beloved Rachel, I have to admit I found it harder than usual to work on this sermon in the last few days. Grief has been called the wild side of love, and after we lose someone we deeply loved, grief often lingers long after, just below the level of conscious awareness, waiting to be triggered. No one living can say anything about the experience of death, of course, though human beings have wrestled with the question since we became aware of our own mortality. Over the millennia, we have imagined a fantastic variety of possibilities. What we can say for certain is that those who have passed live on in the memories of those whose lives they touched, and that what we do in life sends ripples into the universe that may continue to have an impact long after we are gone. Our remembrance ritual this morning is witness to these truths, and I am thankful for the privilege of honoring our loved ones together. The uncertainty of this pandemic is not only about living on the cusp of life and death, though it has taken the lives of far too many people already. The disruption needed to contain the disease has created economic havoc and social disruption on a massive scale, shuttering the churches, schools, and other institutions so central to our lives. Even the most basic human interactions of touch and sharing a meal together must be carefully planned and considered to remain safe. The pandemic has brought economic hardship for millions of people and exposed the inequalities in our society that cannot be ignored. Many families live each day on the brink of financial disaster, while politicians debate whether they deserve assistance or access to affordable health care. And as we talk about our longing to return to a time of normality like the days before the pandemic, we should remember that normality wasn't so great for many of our neighbors before the current chaos. The ongoing fight against systemic racism is but one easy example. Politics impacts all the crises we face, and dealing with the pandemic has understandably become the central issue in the upcoming election. In a couple of days, we will select the next president, the new Congress, many new senators, and lots of local leaders. And no matter how this election is decided, about half of the country will be upset and angry. I pray that no violence will follow, but I believe it is a real possibility. I doubt it would be as widespread as some radical fringe groups would have you believe, but our nation is so divided and tensions are so high that even a little spark would be all that's needed to start a violent event. Already we are seeing attempts at voter intimidation by armed groups, lawsuits designed to disenfranchise voters in unprecedented ways, and a flood of comments in public speeches and on social media intentionally casting doubt on the validity of the election process. Some sober pundits have even suggested that the future of democracy in America may itself be on the cusp in days to come. Meanwhile, climate change and mass extinction don't even make the news cycle much these days. But these crises are existential threats far worse than the COVID pandemic. Here again, politics plays a huge role in what we will do to mitigate the impact we are having on the very web of life. The science is clear about the damage we continue to inflict, but what we do about it, or even if we do anything about it, is mostly a matter of political will and collective human conscience. As I said earlier, we live in uncertain times when every moment seems to teeter on the cusp of hope or devastation. And I have said much about the real and potential devastation because it cannot be ignored. There is enough stress and anxiety to make us physically ill many times over. But we must not forget about the hope. We are not the first generation to experience tremendous crises, and we are unlikely to be the last. We may be facing a combination of challenges that is unprecedented in some respects, and I have doubts that we are any wiser than our ancestors in times of crisis. But we are not simply helpless creatures suffering at the hands of fate. We can make choices to determine, at least in part, the direction our future will take. Some choices are as simple as following the guidelines to slow the spread of the epidemic. Other choices are more difficult, such as drastically reducing the carbon emissions from an unsustainable lifestyle. We also have resources our ancestors never imagined, such as knowledge about diseases and the technology to develop and distribute vaccines. And if we pay attention, even the ordeal of the pandemic can help us find our way forward in unexpected ways. For example, one of the few positive impacts of the economic freeze forced on us by the virus has been a measurable reduction in carbon emissions, proving that we can make an impact when change is forced upon us. The revelation of who is a true essential worker in the unjust global economic system may also bring about long overdue change. If only we can find the courage, will, and cooperation we need to tackle these crises, we can make a difference. For now, we live on the cusp, and the future remains uncertain. Our choices will determine the path we follow, and it will lead us somewhere no matter what. Perhaps the great cloud of witnesses who lived and died before us will provide some insight to help us leave the world in a better state for the generations who come after us. Let us acknowledge our anxiety and enter the liminal time and space of the present moment, guided by our faith and values, for that is what is demanded of us. I invite you now to join in our closing hymn, number 119, Once to Every Soul and Nation. Closing words come from Nancy Wood. Hold on to what is good, even if it is a handful of earth. Hold on to what you believe, even if it is a tree which stands by itself. Hold on to what you must do, even if it is a long way from here. Hold on to life when it is easier letting go. Hold on to my hand, even when I have gone away from you.
Please join me now in reading the words in the order of service for the extinguishing of the chalice flame. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Jessica will now play May Nothing Evil Cross the Door, the hymn number 1.